think we live in an interesting time because, in this year so much things happened. The war in Ukraine, the crisis, energy crisis, economic crisis, or whatever crisis you want to say. But most probably this goes indirectly into your work later. I mean, maybe in some years or some months or I don't know when. But do you have any work where you can say that, yeah, this is reflecting what was done before in the world?
We're living in a very interesting time indeed, and not only because we have passed some crisis in the last years. No, I think that there's a fundamentally change in our society going on since the Second World War, meaning the shift from the industrial, post-industrial, to the information society. And if you look at this, it's a fundamental change about the race of information. And the knowledge about information and approaching the world through the notion of information has made a major shift, changing how we perceive space, being ubiquity, being all over, real time, permanently everywhere, augmented reality, just to name one. But at the same time, you can talk about gene technologies. It's also understanding the body as an information, and we can transform it. The same on the material side, nanotechnologies, femto technologies, and where we're going. So suddenly the world, the way we perceive the world, radically changed. And as such, of course, how we work, how we interact in between each other, how our consciousness is changing accordingly. And so we are in this time, let's say, a little bit like what happened when the industrialization came, before the industrialization, after industrialization. And this change of this technological change, of course, affect every part of the society. And you can compare what happened when industrialization came, huge crisis. You don't have it only and you see also in how in the art it will be reflected. You see the coming up of, for example, of the romantism, the completely folding into the individual, rejecting the external world. Only me, myself, my conscious is the integral world, which is, of course, a reaction to the machine. Something what an artist always, I think, try is to capture the world in the moment he's living and reflecting about it. But not necessarily just now painting, let's say, the war, or no, it is really to work with these ideas, the concepts, the technologies, which are now used to show how we can use them differently. My work on the work I'm doing with my studio is about trying to capture what is going on, where we can see this change, how we can also create this new world, trying to work today. That means also, I give a very simple example. If you have algorithms, artificial intelligence, generative algorithms, and then these are ways how to draw, to paint. Shall we still use a brush by our own and paint like the old master? Or will we just use, for example, artificial intelligence? Will we use generative algorithms to imagine processes which can actually paint?
Yeah, but actually a lot of artists want to be an artist because he or she can still hold a brush and put it into the canvas and make something, and not working with computers or AI or something.
Yeah, I think that now we come to the question about where actually is the place of the artist. And you can see it, look once what happened during the industrialization, let's say with Bauhaus, with the people of the Bauhaus which came up. The question is how we actually can create in the machine age. And of course it's changed the position of the artist, which is not anymore the master. No, he develops methodologies, he has a certain approach, and like this, they still painted by hand, but the way they painted was already completely different. You can look at Albers, for example, the interaction of color. I mean, is this still painting? No, it is to analyze how color interacts, how proportion functions, what is the elementary language of art, and how this elementary language can fit to a new age. So when coming today, I think what is really a major shift in it, and we saw it already in the 60s with the concept art, where we're talking about processes, systems, cybernetics. I think today the place of the artist is maybe much more in thinking a process, a system, than actually being the one who masters a skill. So we are moving from the artist to what we could call the meta-artist. I'm still creating, I'm still writing the software, I'm still mastering all the process, but it is not me manually, which is now making the divine genius work. No, I'm initiating a system, a process, and I'm working with this.
What you're saying is very interesting for me, because I'm still thinking of, because I'm in between an artist and now I'm making interviews, but I feel like a creative person. This is my major thing, that I want to be a creative person. And to do that, and I always thinking about the artist roles, and in a lot of cases, if we're talking about, for example, performative art or concept art, the question is that the artists want to say something about the world and try to eliminate the borders between small, high, and the rest of the people, probably. Or that's just one possible way of method. But I'm still not sure what is the role of the artist. What do you think about it?
Again, this is a very wide question. I think there's a major difference in between making art or being creative. Many people are creative in many fields. Being an artist is, first of all, to inscribe, one, the history of art, and what is the topic of art. I give you an example. I think every of our work is questioning what is art. The beauty of art is that you have to define it. There are millions of ways to define it, and it's a work in itself. And defining it is an epistemological question, and it's a philosophical question. The question about what is representation. It's a fantastic question. Look at this history of art. Look once how we represent the world. Is it, if I paint a tree, it's not a tree. So how I can incorporate actually art as a known reality. Look at what happens during the 20th century. Going away from the illustrative representation of something to creating their own realities. And by creating an artwork as its own reality, it reflects an actual state. So here we have one, I think, important aspect is to say the role of the artist is to define art. And by doing so, he inscribes it into its time, because it's always evolving, it's always changing. And if I can give you an understandable thinking or an interesting approach, and you can say, oh, yeah, I can consider this as art, then this is actually my major role. Secondly, I think if you look in the world, there is something very specific to the art. It's maybe the only field where it is not defined in advance what it is. I'm an architect, I make a house. Of course, you can talk hours about how to make the house, but still, there's a basic function. The question about the artist is, I have to define it. And what is beautiful in it, I find, and that's my motivation why I'm doing art, is that it's maybe one of the only fields, maybe besides philosophy, I love philosophy very much too, where actually it is a very unique point of view to the world. Because it is not, let's call it imprisoned, that would be a little bit judgmental, by a predominant function. And as such, actually we are a little bit like the philosophers. We can once step out of what is the need, what is the function, and think in a more global or meta idea.
Yeah, but do you need the wow effect for that? Because being aesthetic was a kind of major point of art for decades and for a very long time, and it still kind of is. If you go to Venice, and now there's an awesome Kiefer exhibition there, and it's like 6 by 12 meters canvas, and you have this wow effect. Do you need that? Because if I look at here at this image what you are behind you, I still have this. Wow, this is amazing. That's the transformation. But do you think that art needs that wow effect?
First of all, we would have to define what is the wow effect, because of course you can go from the point of being a little bit seductive, no, on an easy, direct, making you wow, it's incredible. But it's not really what would be my approach. My approach would be much more talking about the sublime, or talking about the beauty. And I think when you look at art, what is the sublime, or even the question about aesthetics, the beauty as one of the questions of aesthetics, now it is defined by its time. So if I can create an artifact which in its time can create at the viewer this effect of the sublimation, this is meaningful, then I may have captured somehow something which is essential in our time. And that, I think, is again, when we come back to the question of the role of the artist, I think the artist is somehow in this level where he gives this meta language to something. So let's make it more illustrative. If you look at the Mona Lisa of Da Vinci, why it is such a painting? Because it expresses so perfectly what Renaissance is about. If you look at Malevich, a black square on a black canvas, why is it such an icon? Because it captures entirely what has been thinking, the thought of mankind at that moment. And as such, yes, these artworks are icons of their time. Now, I don't think that we always are able to make these great icons, but the aim of our work is somehow to compress everything into an image, an aesthetic image, and you have this, and this image somehow stands as a kind of meta icon for its time. So, if you say this wow effect, yeah, of course, in an art world where it's a lot of money, it's all about the show, and yes, but art always has been part of the entertainment of the society too. And that does not only have to be seen badly, but it is not the part which interests me. So I would be rather the person which, is the more philosophical person. And if my work creates at a certain moment, at the viewer, this feeling of wow, I hope it is not just because it's pleasing and aesthetically pleasing, but that there is more.
The way you do that through these computers, artificial intelligence, a lot of things what, let's say, normal artists don't use because they can think about this is too new. Is it really essential to what are you using technologically speaking?
Imagine once you would now sit with Leonardo da Vinci here and you would make an interview and you would ask him, what is all this about this technology? And then he would say, look, I'm living in a time where we discover gravity, where we discover the perspective, I use mathematics, I use proportions, and I'm working with this. I'm working today in the 21st century, and I personally can't see the reason to still paint. We have painted 200 years ago. So I will ask how to paint today. And then the many answers are there. For me, definitely, if I want to reflect about today, I have to look at the society of today, and today's society is in the society of information, communication, which use tools, which use certain processes, and also has certain theoretical thoughts, and I will have to work with it. Otherwise, I'm nostalgic. If you look at concept art is not coming from somewhere, nowhere. No, it is a reflection of what is the post-industrial society in the 60s. Computers, space race, and all this is part of them, not shown as such. But of course, if Kossuth talks about Wittgenstein about logics and language, I mean, we are completely in that moment where people look how the information, how these binary logics, how these languages change our perception.
You just mentioned Kossuth, and I like the idea of the work of the chair, actually. He exhibited the chair, and then description, and then the photo. And actually, the idea behind that is that none of them is describing the real chair, because it's more than just an object, but it's also an idea, is the background and things. So let's talk about a little bit about your works. But with this If Then Else series, I see kind of the similarities, similar approach to the point.
If you look at Kossuth, he is very much based on Wittgenstein's Tractus Logicus, where actually he questions the nature of language. And of course, language is also a logical system. That is what Wittgenstein, with true, false statements. So he was working very much about these conditional statements. And when Kossuth is questioning, actually, how we can represent the world, I make a photo of something, it's a photo, it's not the general, I take the definition, it's not the specific, I take the 3D object, it's not, and like this he actually somehow deconstruct language as being truth. It can only take a part of, and by combining it is actually deconstructing the old idea of art that it can represent the world. When we made the book, and there's also this work, If Then Else, of course, Wittgenstein was working about these logics and logic systems in language. We use programming language. It's the most basic conditional statement you can do in programming. If, then, if else. And so we made this neon work, which is of course very, very referential to Kossuth, 5 words in red neon. So this tautology, what you see is actually what it is, and what it says is what it is. So it's this doubling as being a kind of true statement, which of course we can again question. And we put this work, If Then Else, as a neon just written, because there's something interesting in this conditional statement that you have to fulfill it. So you, as a viewer, have to fulfill the condition. And so it is in this idea that we, let's say, with what we are working with what we have learned also through programming, seeing where it comes from, reading all these theories, getting confronted, and then we also play and deconstruct it in this open condition.
Okay, in this moment of time, we have to mention that in this space where we are now, it's an artisan space. It's not just a studio, and the importance of artisan space, I think it's crucial, because of course the museums has a wide range of selection, but this selection is made by several aspects, but maybe not artistic aspects only, or not artistic aspects at all. So you can decide which one is true. And actually, I'm pretty much amazed about artisan spaces, and I think it's a very important part of the society and the art society.
I think there's different aspects to it as being an artist and also running an artist-run space. One is that art is always conditioned by the way art is shown. You look at Fluxus, concept art, land art, just to give some where artists actually really questions what is the space to show art and how to show art, and go completely out of the museum, out of the gallery space, to find new forms to show and interact with the public. The second is that we're making a lot of very thematic, historic exhibitions, so it is for us also a tool to work theoretically about art, to get out of what you could call our tower, no? our own bubble, no? Because I think it's really important that to cross approaches and exchanges, and that in between artists. And also seeing what happened in the last 20, 30 years in the art market and in the art field, I think we are lacking extreme theory and discussion. And many people have taken the role of the artist, talking about art but not doing art. And it has become to an extreme that actually become closely a byproduct. We have seen it with many very famous curators, even collectors, which become more important than the art and the artist. And I think it is important also as artists to take back into hand that not we're only doing things, but we also can talk about it, and also we can mediate it and share it. So that is definitely a critical point too towards this, because I think that the discourse has been taken a little bit too much from us. And the other aspect is to find, a place, if you look at this hyper commercialization of what is art in the last 30 years, which is an art market which has exploded and. But it is not necessarily for the benefit of the artist. It is a benefit for many people, and we have seen how much galleries, institutions and finance can nicely play together. And some artists may profit from it, which have very well understood this, which also maybe like to play this game, and then there are many which don't like to play. So I find it also important to find alternative forms. And it has become crucial also during the Corona pandemic, where we have seen that a little bit this globalized world market crashes with the art, with 180 art fairs every week, where the collectors are just traveling from one place. And suddenly, silence. And then it was also, I think, a moment where you can say, maybe it is also wants to think about a different form of art, a different form of exchanging art. And so, you see, there's many layers why, as an artist, it is interesting also to create a place where you show art and the way you show art and what processes you launch, which goes from personal interest but also which has a kind of societal statement.
Thank you very much for the interview.